Thank you all for joining. This is the third episode of the Ilewara Tiui podcast. And this is a special episode, our first episode back. We are going to be doing more episodes. Not sure exactly at what frequency. Originally, we said that we were going to try to do once a month. So, we'll try to make sure we at least do that, and there may be more frequency to it, maybe once a week or every other week, something like that. But this is our first episode back, and today what we are going to be discussing is President/Captain Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. And so the reason why we're discussing President Traore is because there is a lot of hoopla or noise surrounding him coming from some Western countries, most especially France. And then also recently there was some commentary from General Langley. So also there's some noise coming from the U.S. So just in general, the Western countries have been complaining about Captain Ibrahim Traoré, and it's not a new thing. This has probably been existing since the original coup that happened, which put him into power. And since he's been in power, he's been making statements about how Africa does not get much from the West, but we are seen as poor. And he's made statements about how Africa is actually not poor. It's very rich. We have a lot of resources and the world needs us. Things that we all know, or hopefully we all know. And if you don't know, that's the reason why the name of this podcast is Ilewara Tiui, because the concept behind Ilewara Tiui is it means the land of milk and honey in Yoruba. And the point is to say that Africa is the true land of milk and honey, because we have everything that we need to survive, and we have everything that the world needs to survive. And a lot of what the world needs is being exploited from Africa. And so in this episode here, what we are going to be discussing are some reasons for why it's important to keep President Traoré in power. And then I also want to take some time, and maybe we'll start with some of the good things that he's doing, because it's important to fight against the propaganda that is out there against him. I don't think there are any perfect people, and I don't think there's any perfect government. I actually ascribe more to saying that I believe that there's a lot more private individuals in life, and if the ones that are good stand up and care about people, that we can make more effective change in people's lives than just waiting on governments to help us. That's my personal philosophy. But outside of that, Ibrahim Traoré and his government have been doing a lot of good things for the country of Burkina Faso. And there's a lot of inspiration and influence from him on other African nations. And we have, as Africans, complained about our leaders all of the time. So when we have someone that is doing good things, I think it's important for us to fight for them, because the reality is there is neocolonialism. And the reality is any of the leaders that we do consider to have been good from history have always been seemingly assassinated. And so there are other outlets talking about this as well. But it is important that we do what we can as Africans and Pan-Africans to protect the leaders in our lands that are actually doing good things. You know, the ones that are useless should go, but the ones that are doing good things should stay. And Ibrahim Traoré happens to be one of them. So before I get to the first point of talking about some of the things that he is doing, the investments that he's making in the country of Burkina Faso, I want to also address the comments that General Langley made. So I won't go through everything that he said, but one of the things that he did was he accused Ibrahim Traoré of using the gold reserves in Burkina Faso to protect himself, for his personal protection. And so I just want to say that it is, even in America, you know, common knowledge that we use some portion of taxpayer money or resources of the country to protect our president. So I don't see how, us protecting our president here in America is any different from the people of Burkina Faso using their resources to protect their president. And then my other comment is just, if it is true that he's using the resources to protect himself, you only protecting yourself against what you perceive as danger. So what's the danger that he's perceived? He's had, actually, I think they say upwards of 16 to 18 at least notable attempts on his life. So there is a real threat to him, and there's a reason why he actually does need that protection. So I hope that he's not squandering funds, but for all that we know, he is doing really great things in their country, and he is putting funds towards investment in the future of Burkina Faso. And so if he needs protection, that is his right as the leader of the country. Every country is going to put resources in protecting their leader. And so it's really a mute conversation, and there's no point of justification for any foreign nation to take any measures against his leadership just because he may or may not be protecting himself. That's number one. Number two, I also want to just tackle this concept of democracy, because a lot of folks are out there saying, that in different countries, sometimes what we say is that we're trying to protect democracy or spread democracy to those countries. It's not to say that I don't believe in democracy, but I think it's important to note that different countries are different countries for a reason. And you can't necessarily try to push your philosophy of how you deal with things in your country on another country all of the time. So I think we need to get outside of that as people who live in America or who live in some of these other countries. Stop trying to force your philosophy and your way on other countries, because what works for person A or country A may not work for country B. That's number one. And then number two is, obviously, every country is going to look out for their own self-interest. So America, France, and any other country that's looking at what's going on in Burkina Faso or any other nation, if what's happening there is perceived as a threat to them, then they're going to be against it. And really, the truth of the matter is there's more than enough in the world for everybody to be okay. But there's this mentality of greed that just exists with human beings, in that there's these fears of, if Africa becomes great, if Africans wake up and realize their potential, if Africans wake up and realize the resources they have around them, then, Africa being great is a threat to the rest of the world. And it doesn't have to be that way, but that's the way that it is seen. So that's really what's happening here. Now, I'm going to move into talking about some of the things that Ibrahim Traoré government is investing in, investments that they're making in Burkina Faso. So there's a number of strategic investments, and the whole point is about, enhancing Burkina Faso's economic sovereignty, industrialism, food security, which is a big conversation all throughout, the continent of Africa, food security, and investments in infrastructure, the economy, and just etc. So here are some things that are going on in Burkina Faso. So there are tomato processing plants in, and I'm sorry if I say any of these cities wrong or villages, etc. wrong, because I'm not from Burkina Faso, Yoruba person who lives in America. So there's tomato processing plants in Yako and Bobo Dioulasso. Diola Sasso, but I'm sorry, I probably said that really horribly. You can look these things up. So there's two major tomato processing facilities that were established. And so the point there is to kind of reduce the reliance on imports. If you're Nigerian, you understand that we used a lot of tomatoes. A lot of the other African countries do as well. So, and a lot of these things are imported from places like China and etc. So, and I know because I lived in Liberia for a year. So there is a lot of importing of cheap goods from other nations. And there's a whole back conversation about this whole topic that maybe we can get into on at another point in time about retaliation. There's retaliation that happens sometimes when you try to do these things, to build and grow your own things. There's a lot of things that don't make sense. So I know I'm going off topic, but just for example, a lot of the sugar cubes, like sugar cubes you would use to put in your coffee, like the one that comes in the blue box, the cube sugar that comes in a blue box that comes from France. Well, there's no sugar cane grown over there. So where are they getting that from? Africa and other nations. And then we are importing that stuff back and paying high for it. Doesn't make sense. We have our own land. And a lot of the time we're growing a lot of the things. So, to make it cheaper for the people and greater food security for the people, it just makes sense to do these things. And these are some of the things that he's doing. So yes, there has been an investment. There's 2 tomato processing facilities in those 2 cities. And I'm sorry, because I probably said them wrong. And, those will do things like produce tomato paste, tomato sauce, etc., and other products that will be sold in the markets. And the idea is hopefully that they would be able to be sold at a cheaper price point or a reasonable price point for the people that live in Burkina Faso. And not only does it do that, but also it will create jobs. So supposedly they're saying that, this is about a $9 million investment, and with a capacity of about 5 tons per hour, and then also between 5 and 6 tons per hour, and supposed to have created at least 150 direct jobs, and then indirectly they're saying that would create potentially upwards of 10,000 other jobs because of that investment. Then there's the Tex Burkina Textile Complex. So this is an initiative that's over 92 hectares in Sorgo and Boromo. So this is an investment of 165 billion CFA francs. And don't get me started on the CFA francs. But so the idea there is, so there's cotton that's grown in Africa, and so the idea is to invest in directly using that locally grown cotton and using that to make uniforms and other textiles that can be used within the country. So, for example, the military uniforms. A lot of the African military actually get their uniforms and other things from other nations. I'm just saying France, but it may not exactly be them. But, Burkina Faso is a nation that used to be colonized by France, and hence why the currency is the CFA franc. But anyway, so the idea there is about creating more local and fabrics and, clothes that are made within the country. So that is estimated to have created over 4,000 direct jobs and upwards of potentially 15,000 indirect jobs. Then there's the gold mines, which is what Langley is sitting here complaining about. So they nationalized some of the gold mines, so Bangao and Wagnion gold mines. So this is another topic for another day as well. But when we say that people need to pay attention to what is going on in Africa, a lot of the governments are selling natural resources, mines and land where these natural resources are to other governments. And that's crazy because to me that if we don't put a stop to things like that, we are facing the epidemic of a future where land and everything in Africa is owned by other countries, and the African people are just on the land. And if you're just there and you don't own anything at all, it's your country, but you don't own anything at all, it's a very scary prospect that is one of my fears, and I don't even want to go down the road of talking about it too much. But that is a real thing. And it's not just to say it's just the West. It is the West, but it's also some of the Arab countries too, because they have their hand in that too. So, yes, so they nationalized gold mines. And so the idea there is to allow the country to have a broader control over the natural resources, in using the natural resources to actually improve themselves. So on your own time, or maybe in a different topic, or even if you just listen to one of Dr. Arikana's recent speeches, I believe that she mentions what Niger did with their uranium, I believe it is. And so that's something that people should know about, because that was a whole big deal. Maybe about a year ago or so, that was a really big deal. So, because France had a large hold with the puppet that they had as a president in Niger before the coup in Niger. One of the things after the coup that they did was they put a stop to the price point at which France was getting uranium from Niger. And basically, all that Niger did was kind of demand that the price they pay is a fair market price. And just by doing that alone, that makes a huge economic difference to the gross domestic product in Niger itself. So just using that as an example, what's going on with the gold mines in Burkina Faso is really on the same vein of something that can have a huge impact. Like, why are you allowing people to extort you effectively and just rape the country of its resources? So that's a big, huge thing. I think in one of the other episodes, probably the second episode of the Ilewa or Atiyomi podcast, I believe I talked a little bit about this as well. So very important thing. So then they have the Dancy solar power station. So that's a 25 megawatt solar power plant that is in development, and that's near the Dancing airport. And so that's a loan, funded by a loan from the Export-Import Bank of China. And so that's one. Then there's another solar power station in Tang Dogo, and that one is also that one is a 28 megawatt solar facility, and that's being developed by Quadrant Burkina Faso SA. That's supposed to generate about 48 GWh annually. Then there's the Nagreongo solar power station as well. So those, the last three I just mentioned, those are 3 power stations. So all together, those are, if we round, it's not exactly this, but if you're rounding up, then that's max of 60 megawatt solar stations, 3 different solar stations. So electrifying Africa is another big issue out there. There's a lot of some nations that don't have much of any electricity, Guinea being one of them. So then we have, let's give you some other ones. So there's a national road refinery. There's some expansion of different road infrastructure plans that are out there. The establishment of the Postal Bank of Burkina Faso. Building of different sports facilities. There is a higher education initiative where I have to look into this a little bit more, but they're saying that education is being made to be free. And they also say that currently folks don't have to pay taxes. I have to validate whether that's true or not, but that there's no taxation in Burkina Faso as well. Because again, they're just using their resources like the gold and other things to be able to fund their needs. So there is no taxation, but that has to be fact checked, of course. And there's other things that are going on, so I just want to keep it short. But the point of me, you can actually go and do your own research. There's a lot of things out there that are being said, and I forget exactly what it is, but I know there's some other investments that they're making in other African countries as well to support, the needs of their nation. And then of course there's the Sahel Alliance, but that's between Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger as well, because as we know, I was so disappointed to see ECOWAS's stance of continuing to threaten those nations. So it is what it is. You can do a lot of research or watch some videos to get some ideas of other things that are going on in Burkina Faso, just so that I don't make this even longer, because I have a tendency, I think, to rant. But for example, on YouTube, if you want to go check out Africa Today's channel, you'll see they do have a video talking about 8 mega projects that Traore and his government are undertaking there. So there's a lot more that can be said about good things that he's doing in the country. So while they're accusing him of using gold to protect himself, and calling him a dictator and say whatever negative things that they're saying, actually sentiment on the ground is that his people actually do love him. And Pan-Africanly, those of us who are not puppets and have brains, and I know that sounds very harsh, but those of us who have Africa at heart and want to see the betterment of our continent, along with the people in his nation, generally actually do have a sentiment of, we see him as a good leader. And so it's just something that is very important to continue to talk about, because otherwise, when you have the West trying to paint him in a different way, we know that he is under threat. And so we're trying to fight against that. And really, there's only one thing that needs to be done here. Effectively, if the West just leaves Burkina Faso alone, everything would be all good. So it's a basic MYOB, mind your business situation. That's simplifying it, because obviously they're not going to just, no one ever just minds their business. But that's really all that needs to be done here. But here are some reasons for why it's important for us to support President Captain Ibrahim Traoré. Okay? And so one of the reasons is the economic reforms that he's making, and the way that he's been encouraging the people to come up with ideas to invest in the country, to the way he's been creating jobs and utilizing the resources to really make differences in people's lives. He actually, so through all their investments, the average wages are going up. They're creating jobs there. They have more control over their resources, like the gold, the cotton, and other natural resources. He's creating more equitable wealth distribution and, long-term economic independence for his nation. And, that's a very important thing. He has a Pan-African vision. He's a Pan-African leader. And really, he's been distancing himself as well as his country from, French and other Western influences. And so he's also been influencing nations like Mali and Niger, really And then he also has, grassroots supports and supports from the youth and his people as well. If his people are saying that they want him to be there, then who are we as other people from that are not even living in his nation to be trying to influence them? Who is anyone that is not in Burkina Faso to tell them what leader they should have? That's not democracy. It is not democracy for another nation to dictate what kind of leader you should have. So anyway, he has the support of his country and the youth, and he has support from other people like me in the diaspora. There are even people calling for him to let them join his military. How serious they are or not, I don't know, but that's actually a real thing. There's several people calling for that. And I don't have any validation of this, but some people have even said that that Niger has said that as well. But the reality on ground anyway is that there is the Sahel Alliance, which is between Niger, Mali, and Burkina Faso. So I would hope and pray that they would, defend the sovereignty of Burkina Faso. And I hope and pray that even Ibrahim Traoré himself as a leader, that other people in his government and in his surroundings are like-minded enough like him that no matter what's going on or what happens, getting rid of him, which I pray would not happen, would not be a setback, because there'd be enough like-minded people that we would be able to continue the goodness that he's starting to put in place here. So, and then for some other items, there's talks about political stability and avoidance of things like other coups, because everyone else in the world is always like, oh, coups are bad. Well, all this that they're doing in the West here, we all know that most of the time when there are coups, those coups on the face might look like they just come from inside these countries, but a lot of the times the coups are backed by other nations like France and even the United States. So we want to make sure that there's stability in Burkina Faso, because they're growing and developing as a nation with this man as their president. And a lot of what some of the folks are talking about out there is, I don't exactly see it as a full equivalent, but if you compare what happened in Libya when Gaddafi was a leader, whether he was perfect or not, he was a Pan-African leader, and he was pushing for things like a Central African currency that would be backed by African resources like African gold, to get away from, so that we could have some more power over our currencies, because that's another topic in and of itself. But since Gaddafi was assassinated, there's been instability in Libya. And so essentially what is being said is that we want to avoid that type of instability come into Burkina Faso. We don't need Burkina Faso to be a place where there's, coups every other this year or that year, and just constant war and constant fighting. We do not need that, because that's a distraction. And even in places like Congo, that's a distraction. Because if you're not fighting, what are you doing? If you're not fighting and you're not in survival mode, then you have a chance to be on offense. You have a chance to actually develop. You have a chance to actually make things better for people's lives. But if you're always fighting each other, then you don't have the chance to be able to develop and make things better. So we don't need that instability in that nation. If they continue to develop, they can become a place that, other people want to go to. And that's a great thing for us as Africans, to have a nation that is not full of all of this corruption and constant war and fighting, and where you can go there and you can, when you're there, the products that you're consuming or the things that people are utilizing within the country are made on the land, whether that's fully in Burkina Faso or even just fully from other African nations. It's a beautiful thing. So, and there's jihadists fighting and other things like that. With Traore's strategies and his government, them continuing to fight against that and do as much to put that to an end would be a great thing, because I know that there are, I don't have full validation, but I do believe that a lot of these related groups come from the influence of Western nations, because, there's always a puppet master behind the wall somewhere. So anyway, thank you for tuning in. I apologize if I've offended anyone, but the reality is I'm an African and I believe in Africa. I want to see a beautiful future for Africa where we are the place that everyone wants to be. I know Africa's full of many nations, but I would like us to be the center of the world where everyone wants to be. Or if you want to study medicine or etc., I'm just handpicking countries now, but let's say if you want to study medicine, you want to go to college in Nigeria because we have the best world-class schools there. Where if you want to do dentistry, maybe you go to Ghana because the best dentists are in Ghana within the world, and etc. We have a lot of knowledge as a people in Africa and also in the diaspora. Look at the things that have been invented around the world. So we have the knowledge, we have the capability, and we have all the resources on the land in Africa to be able to achieve that. All we need to do is to believe in ourselves. Sometimes capital is an issue, but it's not always capital. That is a problem. It's taking that initiative and then also standing behind each other, united, to not allow other countries and influences like the West to be able to divide us, because that is our biggest issue, is the division. If we solve that issue of division, then we can be that Ilewara for our people. We do not need a future where 100 years from now, 200 years from now, 300 years from now, African people are always just trying to run away to America or to London or to whatever. We don't need our people to be consistently always running away from our land. Instead, we need to figure out how to make our land a place that we love and want to be in. So that's something that is very important to me, and why I want to be able to utilize my career to do what I can to help in that effort of making Africa Ilewara Atioi in the eyes of our African people, where it's to our benefit and we're not just robots on our land. So thank you if you've gotten through this episode. I hope that you were able to understand that we need to support President Traore, because that's the whole point. And thank you for listening.